Roman Reigns is still the favorite going into Backlash. Let's not pretend otherwise. But here is the real question. Have we already reached the point where Jacob Fatu winning would not even feel impossible anymore? Because that is where this gets interesting. A few months ago, this would have sounded insane. Roman Reigns as world champion, Jacob Fatu as challenger, and people seriously asking if the title could change hands already? Most fans would have laughed that off in 2 seconds. Now? Not really. Now it actually feels like a real discussion. And that is because WWE has done something very smart here. They have not booked Jacob like a guy who is lucky to be in the match. They have booked him like a man who might actually blow the whole title picture apart. So today, let's really talk about it. Can Jacob Fatu actually dethrone Roman Reigns at Backlash? This doesn't feel like a normal challenger story. That is where you have to start. Because if this was just another quick title defense, fans would feel it instantly. WWE is usually very obvious when somebody is only there to lose. The segments feel flatter, the challenger never really gets the upper hand in a way that matters, the champion always feels one step above everything. That is not what is happening here. Jacob does not feel beneath Roman in the story, he feels dangerous. That is a huge difference. He is not being presented like some temporary obstacle, he is being presented like a genuine problem. And once WWE starts doing that, fans automatically stop looking at the match like a formality and start asking whether something bigger could actually happen. That is exactly what has happened with this feud. Roman is still the champion, Roman is still the bigger star, Roman is still the safer choice. But Jacob? Jacob feels like the unstable factor. And in wrestling, unstable is where surprises live. Jacob already has the hardest part done. This is what makes him different. Before a wrestler can believably take a title from somebody like Roman Reigns, the audience has to believe in the idea first. That is the hardest part. Not the match, not the finish, the belief. And Jacob already has that. He looks like a killer. He talks like a man who expects to win. He moves like somebody who is not there to have a good match, but to wreck the whole thing. That matters more than people think. A lot of challengers are technically good enough to be in a title match, but they still do not feel like real champions. Jacob already feels like he could wear the belt, and the audience would buy it immediately. That is a massive step, and not everybody gets there this fast. So when people ask, can he actually do it? The honest answer is yes. Not because WWE told us to clap for him. Not because commentators screamed his name louder, but because the guy actually feels believable in that spot. That is what changes everything. The biggest thing working for him isn't just momentum, it is fear. Roman Reigns has been in huge matches with huge names. That alone does not make this special. What makes this different is that Jacob brings a kind of danger that does not feel controlled. Roman usually walks into big matches feeling like the center of the universe. Even when he is under pressure, he still feels like the one setting the tone. Jacob changes that. Jacob feels like the kind of opponent who drags Roman into chaos instead of playing Roman's game. He does not feel polished, he does not feel neat, he feels violent. He feels like someone who can make the match ugly in a way Roman may not fully control. That is why this works. Because Roman is at his most interesting when somebody across from him feels like they might actually pull him into deep water. Jacob feels like that guy, but this is still Roman Reigns. And this is where the other side of the argument hits hard. Because no matter how strong Jacob looks, he is still facing Roman Reigns. That is not a small thing. Roman is not just another champion. Roman is the kind of name companies protect for a reason. He carries big matches, big stories, and big money. That is why a lot of people still think the result is obvious. And honestly, that is fair. If WWE wants the safest option, Roman keeps the title. Roman moves on. Jacob looks strong in defeat. Everybody walks out protected enough, and the company stays in control of the top picture. That is the logical route. And WWE loves logical routes when championships are involved. So if you are looking at this like a betting man, Roman probably still feels like the favorite. But being the favorite is not the same thing as making the upset impossible. That is the whole point. This is why the timing feels so interesting. Sometimes the person who should win is not the same as the person who is hottest to win right now. That is where Jacob becomes really dangerous. Because his timing is good, maybe even perfect. He feels fresh, he feels hot, he feels like he is growing in real time. The crowd energy around him is there, the aura is there, the threat is there. And if WWE waits too long, there is always the risk that the moment cools off. That happens all the time. A wrestler catches fire, the company plays it safe, and a few months later, the magic is not quite the same. Fans still like the wrestler, but the feeling is different. The spark is lower. WWE has absolutely made that mistake before. So if somebody inside the company is looking at Jacob and thinking, this guy is ready now, then Backlash is actually the exact kind of show where you do something like this. Not WrestleMania, where the whole world expects the biggest established names. Not some random weekly show, but a premium live event right after Mania where one shocking finish can instantly change the whole conversation. That is why people are even entertaining this idea in the first place. Because the timing is not crazy, it is actually kind of dangerous. If Roman wins, the story still works. Now this is important too. Because if Roman retains, it does not mean the feud failed. Not at all. There is a version of this where Roman survives, Jacob looks like an animal, and fans leave saying Jacob is absolutely a future world champion. That outcome still helps him. A lot. In some ways, it may even be the cleaner long-term move. You let Jacob push Roman to the edge. You let him look like a monster. You let him lose without looking small. Then you circle back later when the moment is even bigger. That is classic wrestling logic. And to be fair, it works. So this is not one of those situations where Jacob must win or everything is ruined. WWE can still make him in defeat if the match is laid out the right way. Roman survives, but Jacob walks out more dangerous than before. That is a very believable outcome too. And maybe that is exactly what they do. The problem is, safe doesn't always hit hardest. This is the part that makes the hot take interesting. Roman retaining is safe. Roman retaining is sensible. Roman retaining is easy to explain. But Jacob winning? That is the result people remember. That is the result that changes the temperature of the whole company in one night. Suddenly the title scene feels new. Suddenly Roman is no longer the answer at the top. Suddenly Jacob is not the future. He is the present. That is a much bigger move, and that is why fans keep coming back to this question. Because deep down, everybody can see the upside of it. It would be shocking, yes, but it would not be random. It would not feel fake. It would not feel unearned. It would feel bold. And WWE does not always go bold when it has the chance. That is what makes this match so fascinating. So what's the actual call? If I had to make the real prediction right now, Roman Reigns probably retains. That is still the most likely outcome. He is too established, too trusted, and too valuable at the top for WWE to casually move the belt off him unless they are fully convinced the timing is perfect. So no, I would not say Jacob is the favorite. But here's the part that matters more. Jacob winning would not feel fake anymore. And that is a huge compliment to how WWE has handled him. A few months ago, the idea would have sounded like forced fantasy booking. Now it feels like a realistic possibility. Not the most likely one, but a real one. That is a major difference, and that is why this match feels bigger than just another defense. Because people are not only watching Roman to see him survive, they are watching to see if WWE is finally ready to do something wild. Final take. So can Jacob Fatu actually dethrone Roman Reigns at Backlash? Yes. Absolutely yes. Will he? That is tougher. Roman still feels like the likely winner, but Jacob no longer feels like a challenger who is just there to take the loss and move on. He feels like somebody who can actually change the direction of the title picture if WWE wants him to. That is what makes the match worth talking about. Roman brings the status, Jacob brings the danger, and when you mix those two things together, you get the kind of title match where the obvious result suddenly does not feel quite so obvious anymore. And if WWE decides to go all the way with Jacob, then Backlash may not end with Roman Reigns surviving another big defense. It may end with the company creating a brand new monster at the very top.